Hey boss, how are you doing today? Hi, I'm good. How are you? I'm doing really well actually, and I had something that I wanted to share with you. I just found out last week that I am pregnant. Oh my god. Well, congratulations. That's wonderful news, and this is going to be your first. What an exciting moment. Congratulations. I mean, I'm a little nervous, honestly, because it's my first, but I couldn't be happier at the same time. I mean, I've always wanted a family. I know, yeah, I completely get it. I mean, I have three of them, so I know where you're coming from. Well, listen, congratulations once again. I am here to support you. We are here to support you. This is a wonderful new chapter in your life, and I couldn't be happier for you. Well, thank you so much for everything, your support and encouragement. It means the world to me. And I'm so happy to have another mom as my boss because I know that you get it, you understand, and I'm very grateful. Thank you. I'm gonna head on back to my office. Let me know if you need anything like usual. Take care. Guess what? She's pregnant. Can you believe this? She is pregnant. So what am I supposed to do now? Now I can't leave the office anymore at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What about my three kids? What about my flexibility? I'm gonna have to be covering her doctor's appointments. She's going to be gone for 12 weeks on maternity leave, and I'm gonna have to do everything. We'll put her in her place. I was an admissions counselor at a university. I loved my job and I was good at it until I told my boss and her boss that I was pregnant. This is my story. Like what you saw at the beginning of this video, when I first told my boss that I was pregnant, she was very congratulatory and seemed excited for me. Because that's the HR thing to do, right? Pretty quickly after my pregnancy announcement, my pregnancy started to be framed as an inconvenience to my boss with the support of her boss. Of course, since I can't share the day-to-day details of everything that happened because then this video would be like 4 hours long, I've broken down some key moments that I documented when all of this was going on to tell you my story concisely. For those of you who live in the US, you likely already know that maternity leave is unpaid. You have 12 weeks of protected leave, and your employer is not obligated to pay you during that time away. What most employees end up doing is taking accrued PTO during those 12 weeks so that they still have an income while they are on their maternity leave. Additionally, if you have ever had prenatal care, which if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you have, you know that doctor's appointments are not always the most flexible or the easiest to schedule, and you have several appointments throughout your pregnancy. And this, my friends, is where a lot of the drama started. Doctor's appointments and PTO. Let me just preface this quickly before I show you the actual email exchange. This was coming from a mother of 3 children who obviously knew what it was like to be pregnant and receive prenatal care. Hi, Catherine. I want to be able to provide you with the flexibility that you need during this time. However, since these appointments occur frequently, would it be possible to start scheduling this early morning or at the end of the day? If you choose to keep these appointments during the middle of the workday and are longer than 1 hour, you would need to start sending PTO requests through workflow. Please let me know what you prefer. Hi boss, I do prefer to have my appointments early in the morning, but they sometimes don't have anything else available. Due to the distance with the hospital being in Miramar and the wait times, it will likely always take over an hour. So far, I have only had one appointment that was in the middle of the day at 1 p.m. on March 16th. I can retroactively request an hour of PTO for this day if that would be best. Please let me know if I should request an hour of PTO for these other appointments I have already had.
February 1st, 10 a.m., February 15th, 8 a.m., March 16th, 1 p.m., March 22nd, 9 a.m. Hi, Catherine. I am asking if for future appointments it is at all possible to schedule early morning or the end of the day so you do not need to request time off. Although these appointments may have not been scheduled during the middle of the day, you have taken more than an hour of time off for these. There is no need to retroactively request PTO for these. I see you have a future appointment on May 10th from 1 to 3. For future appointments that require more than an hour of work time, please send a PTO request if that is what you prefer doing and/or is the only available time. I have an appointment scheduled May 1st at 11 a.m. and another May 10th at 1 p.m. Can you please show me how to enter a request of an hour in workflow when you have time? Thank you. Catherine, when a personal matter falls in the middle of the workday, the employee should submit half a day. As you mentioned, you will need the additional time to drive to and from the hospital. You can request half PTO days for these appointments, or you can try to reschedule them. Again, please let me know what you prefer. I apologize for my confusion. I have requested a half day in workflow for both May appointments. Thank you.
In these emails, I was attempting to clarify expectations, but that was impossible because she was constantly shifting them. First, my boss suggested either early morning or late afternoon doctor's appointments to avoid having to take PTO. Then later, she emphasizes needing to take PTO for any appointment that lasts longer than an hour, which is all of them when you account for commute time and also waiting time in the doctor's office. By the way, it is not common practice to ask salaried employees to take PTO for doctor's appointments unless they take the whole day, which mine were not, as you saw in the email exchanges. The flexibility that she was pretending to offer me was conditional. It was being packaged and presented to me as flexibility when really it was only about her conditions that didn't really even line up or make a lot of sense. How cruel to tell me that I needed to take half a day PTO when you knew that I was trying to accrue that time so that I could have it for my maternity leave, and you also know that doctor's appointments are necessary and unavoidable during pregnancy. And I'll tell you something else that really pisses me off about this. One day, I had a coworker walk into my office and tell me,
"Hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow because I'm working from home since I'm moving into another apartment."
so she gets to have a work from home day when she's physically moving from one apartment to the next, and I can't get away with 2 hours to have a doctor's appointment. I needed to take PTO for that, but she didn't need to take PTO for moving from one apartment to the next. Tell me this wasn't about being inconvenienced and upset about my pregnancy. My pregnancy was a problem rather than a normal life event that required medical care. Another example that I can give you of this unsupportive, passive-aggressive, manipulative behavior took place when I had a time-sensitive genetic testing appointment that I had to have for my pregnancy, and that appointment happened to overlap with a tabling event, otherwise known as a tabling fair. If you've ever went to college or university, you have seen something like this. I called my boss, who, again, has 3 kids of her own and knows what this genetic testing is all about and that it is time sensitive. I called her and I explained the situation, and I asked her if she would prefer that I try to schedule at a different clinic that was further away that could possibly work me into their schedule that week, but on a different day or at a different time, so that I could still complete the genetic testing and also go and participate in the tabling event or the tabling fair. She told me that she would do the tabling fair so that I could go to this appointment, and she also said that she would do the event the next day as well, saying to me,
"I'm happy to help. I know that it's a busy time of year."
fast forward to the day of this event, and my boss's boss walks into my office and says,
I was asking your boss yesterday why she was going to the medical campus fair today, and you're not, but I guess you have a doctor's appointment? Yes, I do. But you're going to the such and such fair tomorrow, right? No, my boss is going. With raised eyebrows and a high pitch in her tone. Oh! I went on to explain that was how the events had been divided by my boss since we had several during the month of March, and I was doing the 2 evening presentations, which included a 5 p.m. presentation to the Farm Tech class at such and such campus, and a 6 p.m. presentation to the Pre-Pharmacy Club at another university. The email exchange that I am going to read aloud here happened that same day when my boss was letting me know that she could no longer join our one-on-one that had been scheduled that day. Hi, Catherine. I can't meet this afternoon. I have to work on a report due today and some administrative work this afternoon, as I will not be able to work on it this morning since I am covering the fair. Now, this response is from me, of course. If we need to switch, we can, and I can do the fair tomorrow. Let me know. Hi, Catherine. I am always happy to cover fairs when needed. However, since attending fairs and recruitment events are part of your role, if you are available, I think it is best for you to attend this event. Hi, boss. Of course I am happy to do the fairs. When we had our one-on-one at the beginning of March, I remember I had expressed that the amount of different events we were having looked intimidating, and you had divided the events to be shared between us. If you need for me to do all of them, then I will. Today was the only exception because the testing was time sensitive at the clinic. By the way, I never received an email response after I sent this.
At this point, it was starting to become more obvious to me who these women were and how they conducted management. My boss completely flipped the script on me, acting as if I didn't want to do my job, acting as if I didn't want to go to these tabling fairs, and acting as if she's not the one who suggested the help. And then on top of that, she goes running to her boss to misrepresent me, and her boss coming into my office to do what? Intimidate me? Wow, you're such badasses ganging up on a pregnant woman like that. You're both just chicken shit. This type of behavior went on for just about 4 weeks or so, with increased accumulating tension daily. During this time, I had asked for meetings one-on-one with my boss. I had asked for meetings with my boss and her boss at the same time. I had even had a one-on-one meeting with my boss's boss, and all of these meetings never went anywhere. And you're about to see documentation of why. They had both already drawn their own conclusions about who I was as a person, my character, who I was as an employee, and they both were hell-bent on misinterpreting me and reframing everything that I said and did as something negative. All of this led me to decide to look for another job and resign from the one that I had when I was 5 months pregnant. Here is my documentation from our final meeting that my boss had scheduled for us and titled it Performance Meeting.
The director of admissions scheduled a performance meeting with me after the email misunderstanding on April 6, 2023, in regards to training. Although the meeting was titled as such, the conversation was not about my performance at all. The DOA opened up the conversation stating that communication is very important to her and important in any working relationship. She stated that she feels our communication has broken down, especially the past few weeks. The DOA went on to say that she feels I am argumentative, and there have been several times that we have went back and forth in email exchange that was unnecessary. I told the DOA that I was confused by her comments and I didn't know why or how I had come across as argumentative in some of our email exchanges. I asked if she could provide examples of particular emails when it seemed as though I was arguing. I also mentioned that on April 3rd, 2023, when I met with her and the Associate Dean of Admissions and Academic Affairs, I had asked for feedback during that meeting. The DOA and I had also had one-on-one meetings every Wednesday and this had never been mentioned before. The DOA said her 2 examples of me coming across as argumentative was the email exchange about the PTO and doctor's appointments, as well as my response to her email telling me she was concerned to see me say that I hadn't been trained on foreign transcript evaluations. In regards to the PTO doctor appointment email, my boss stated, "I felt like I was being nice to you by offering alternative scheduling in place of taking PTO, and you were hesitant to work with me." I told her I felt that all I had been doing in the email exchange about my PTO and doctor's appointments was asking questions and looking for clarification. I told her that request for me to schedule my doctor's appointments differently or take PTO was sprung on me. I had already had several doctor's appointments prior, and it was a sudden request from her. I also said that when I had been an hourly employee previously, there was always a system that allowed for PTO requests by hour. I didn't realize that our system and workflow required either half-day or full-day PTO. Additionally, I explained that my first email in response to using the new document I felt was just a sincere thank you for taking the time to break down the information and send the new document since I hadn't been trained on that particular template as we had talked about the day before in our one-on-one. I told her I could potentially see how my following email in response to her reaction may have come across as defensive because my integrity and honesty was being questioned in her email, and I felt I needed to defend myself with examples of having used a separate document for foreign course evals. I also mentioned that instead of just asking me what I had meant by my email, she assumed, reacted, and copied the Associate Dean of Admissions and Student Affairs on the email. Her response was to tell me that she wasn't interested in digging up the past and pinpointing everything I have said, but rather wanted a solution on how we could move forward with our communication. I replied that maybe if she doesn't like how I come across in emails, she should talk to me directly in person. I said that I have always given the respect of speaking face to face, but I felt that when she saw I made a mistake or she had an issue with something that I said or did, she would put it in an email and copy her boss. The DOA told me that it doesn't matter if her boss is CC'd on an email or not because her perception is irrelevant since my boss and I are the ones working together and this conversation is about our communication and working relationship. I asked if it doesn't matter what her boss's perception is, then why is she CC'd on emails? For example, the one in response to the foreign evaluation template. My boss said that her boss was copied on that email because I had mentioned my onboarding and her boss was part of my onboarding, so she wanted to include her. I stated that I had put thought and consideration into what had been going on for about a month. There are many things that I have heard and experienced that are concerning to me, especially in my condition being pregnant, especially being here alone, far away from loved ones and a support network. I said that I needed to do what was best for my mental health and especially the health of my pregnancy, and I had come to the conclusion that meant leaving the position. My boss said she was sorry to hear that was the decision I had made and that the purpose for this conversation was so that it didn't escalate that far, but she respects people's decisions. The next part of the conversation moved on to talk about business-related items that she had already included as part of our one-on-one meeting agenda. As this conversation wrapped up, I asked my boss if she had anything else for me, and she asked me if I was sure about my resignation. She said she wouldn't want me to make an emotional decision, especially considering that I am pregnant. I told her that I appreciated her concern and that I knew where it was coming from, but that I was firm on my decision. I emailed my resignation letter to her and CC'd the Director of Human Resources.
The same song and dance, right? Dismissive, avoids accountability, takes assertiveness and asking questions as a personal attack, keeps putting the burden on me to figure out the situation and find a solution, even though she's the fucking manager. Instead of being productive and supportive, she was clearly more worried about her time, her workload, and her flexibility, and how it was going to be impacted by my pregnancy and eventual maternity leave. That says a lot about her as a manager and as a person. She wasn't trying to set me up for success. She was trying to shield herself from inconvenience. Honestly, resigning that day, it gave me so much relief and satisfaction. If she would have been a decent person with compassion, she would have had my help during that entire time up until my maternity leave, and then she would have had my help return back 12 weeks later. It's ironic, isn't it? She was so worried about having to cover for me because of my doctor's appointments, and in the end, she ended up just having to do all of the work herself anyways because she couldn't figure out how to not be a bitch. So satisfying. I'm sure that it's surprising to find out that I quit my job when I was 5 months pregnant, considering it's a very vulnerable time, health insurance is needed, and transitioning jobs isn't easy, especially when you are pregnant. Basically, after my first conversation with HR about what was happening in my department, I decided from that point on that I was gonna start looking for another job. Don't get me wrong, the woman that I worked with in HR was wonderful, and she was willing to open up an investigation to determine if I was being treated unfairly because of my pregnancy. She had forewarned me that the investigation would likely take several weeks and that it could make the tension in the office a lot more intense and uncomfortable than what it already was. To be real with you, I just didn't want to deal with it and have it not turn out in my favor. It would have been added stress, added anxiety, and it would have required me to stay in a toxic environment longer than what I deserved to. I had friends who tried to encourage me to stay with that employer through my pregnancy, emphasizing that it could be a lot more challenging to find a new job once my pregnancy became visible. And I remember a couple of them saying,
"You can just look for a new job when you're on maternity leave."
if you've ever taken care of a newborn, which I imagine that you have if you're here watching this video, you know that you don't eat, you don't sleep, the baby is glued to you. And somehow I was going to also apply to jobs and interview during this time. Yeah, no. I was very fortunate to find an employer who liked what they saw in my resume. They liked me during the virtual interview and ultimately decided to hire me. I am very happy to say that I am still with that employer today. I have been with them since June 2023. My previous job, however, according to my sources, has went through 2 different admissions counselors since I left in May 2023. I think it's safe to say the problem wasn't me. Anyway, that's my story about my toxic employer and how they were unsupportive of my pregnancy and how it taught me to stand firm against bullies and trust in myself. If you've ever had a boss make your life harder, treat you unfairly, I would love to read about it in the comments because I know that I am not the only one. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next video.